Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for watching. Tonight, a mother is alarmed by the healthcare system after a long stretch in the ER with her son. Plus, police are looking to crack down on Windsor's most dangerous intersections. We'll tell you how. What's the deal with downtown trees like this one, now surrounded by asphalt? It's a recent fix, all while the city works on its first ever urban forest management plan. And bird enthusiasts are soaring after a rare bird sighting. A bird usually found in the north has turned up at Canada's southernmost tip. An Amherstburg mom says a recent emergency room visit has been an eye-opener to how broken the healthcare system is. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa reports.
Brianna Barnes woke up one morning to find her son Julian looking like this. He was having a severe allergic reaction. After taking an ambulance to the ER, Barnes was prepared to be there for a while, but she didn't expect multiple paramedics to also be waiting with them.
I casually was like, is this a common thing? And the paramedics were very honest. They were like, yeah, it happens a lot. Like, we were here for hours yesterday.
Barnes says as the hours passed, the hallway she was in filled with about 16 paramedics.
I'm watching critical services and critical resources being used essentially as a Band-Aid for the hospital.
At one point, she says a man waiting beside her asked,
if you guys are here taking care of us, who's out in the community? And the paramedics were like, no one.
Unfortunately, even today as we speak, that is occurring at all three hospital sites.
The situation Barnes experienced is what causes code blacks, which is when there are no free ambulances to respond within the community. During 1 month last year, there was 629 minutes where there wasn't a free ambulance. And when that happens, this is what it can look like. There's a number of factors that contribute to something like this. When there's no beds available in the hospital, that essentially overwhelms your ER, and then that causes paramedics to have to wait before they can discharge their patients. But sometimes, based on the patient's condition, the paramedic needs to monitor them. But the EMS says that demand is also up.
One reason could be people think that they can use ambulance to skirt the waiting room and get ahead of the queue, and that is just not the case.
But he says people are also using the ER when they might not need it, and this could be because there isn't enough urgent care or family doctors in the community. Strategies in place to reduce this paramedic delay include having nurses watch over ambulance patients, having paramedics and nurses that help people in the community. This fall, EMS says the province is also allowing them to connect someone to another health resource outside of the ER. But until then, Barnes is going to think twice every time she calls an ambulance.
If there's a crisis in the city, if something happens, people are going to die because there are not enough resources, and I worry about it from a personal level.
Essex Windsor EMS says in an emergency, you should still always call. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
To help you know when to dial 911, Essex Windsor EMS created a website called Make the Right Call. It lists a bunch of symptoms that require an ambulance, like chest pain, a bad allergic reaction, or bad pain. EMS say that they hope that this can better help direct people. Drivers can expect to see more police at Windsor's most dangerous intersections. There's going to be a heavier presence at 10 intersections, and we have got the list. So the first spot, 3100 Howard Avenue. That is right at Devonshire Mall. Then we've got EC Row at Howard Avenue. Walker Square is up next at 4400 Walker Road. Then we have a few spots on Tecumseh Road at Howard Avenue, Lozon Parkway, and Olette Avenue. From there, Dougal Avenue and West Grand Boulevard is another spot, plus EC Row Expressway and Walker Road. Then we have another one at Tecumseh at Forest Glade Drive, and lastly, Provincial Road and Walker. So why are they focusing on these particular intersections? Well, they are spots where the highest number of collisions were reported last year. Officers are focusing on all traffic violations, and that includes failing to stop. Now, those fines can be pricey, around $300 for failing to stop at a red light and a little more than $110 for not stopping at a stop sign. A couple of trees in downtown Windsor have suffered a peculiar fate. They have been surrounded by asphalt. TJ Deere on why that's happened and what's next for the city's tree canopy.
Compared to other parts of the city, there aren't that many trees here in downtown Windsor, but two of them have been completely surrounded by asphalt. The entire bases of the trees have been covered with only the thin trunks sticking out from the ground and covering most of the grates that are surrounding the trees as well. I asked Windsor residents what they thought of this.
It almost seems like we're defeating the purpose. Why have a tree here if we're just going to kill it with asphalt?
Trees are supposed to be looking nice, right? And the asphalt's kind of taken away a bit from that. The trees would be nice if, they were surrounded by mulch or grass or whatever.
There's no way to water the plants, so they're definitely going to die out pretty soon. Like usually what happens is they have a certain barrier around the trees to protect the trees, but I'm not sure why they have done it this way.
Their opinions come as the City of Windsor's Forestry Division is creating their first ever urban forest management plan. A virtual town hall is being held tomorrow at 6 p.m. for the city to present its current forestry state and what they want to see happen in the future. Windsor residents are invited to join and share their thoughts on what they want to see. According to a 2020 report, 16% of Ward 3 was covered by trees. This is the third lowest count in the city, with Ward 10 having only 10%. By contrast, almost a third of Ward 1 was covered. Throughout the entire city, almost 20% has tree cover. A report from the city's forestry division says more than a quarter of the city can be considered for planting extra trees. But one resident says the city already has a troubling environmental track record.
They're willing to tear down trees fairly easily. They hassle homeowners for certain plants in the public way, and these kinds of things all have to be looked at. We need to move beyond just being a car city.
As for the trees behind me, the city's manager of public works tells me they will survive. He said instead of using a hot tar, which kills the trees, the city poured a cold mix over them. The city's manager of public works said they did this because someone complained about the stumps of the trees, calling them a safety hazard. TJ Deere, CBC News, Windsor.
The first person to officially enter the race for Ontario Liberal leader is launching his campaign tonight. As Lorenda Redicop tells us, they may not be the sole candidate for long.
I'm Nate Erskine-Smith, and I'm running for leader of the Ontario Liberal Party to make a difference.
He made the announcement in this video on social media. The Beaches East York MP attempting to make the move from Parliament Hill to Queen's Park, going from a party in power to one in third place that doesn't even have official party status. But he sees similarities from when he first ran at the federal level.
The Liberal Party was in third place. We had a really frustrating Conservative majority government, and we dedicated ourselves to generational renewal and really strong field organization and doing politics differently. And I think we should carry through that idea to provincial politics. He
says he's putting together a young, diverse team. Some of the biggest issues for him?
Healthcare, public education, and then housing. The fact that young people can't find a place to live, they're leaving our communities, leaving our province.
There will be a provincial seat opening up. Mitzi Hunter will resign tomorrow as she runs for Mayor of Toronto. Erskine-Smith says he won't be joining the by-election for her seat, instead focusing on traveling the province to gain support. As for who else is expected to be on the ballot, Bonnie Crombie is thinking more seriously about a run, according to a source close to her, after being encouraged by people at the federal Liberal convention this past weekend. The source says she'd already received support from others across the province. At that convention, 3 likely candidates appeared on social media saying they signed each other's nomination papers. Current MPPs at Queen's Park, Stephanie Bowman and Ted Hsu, along with MP Yasser Naqvi.
Seeking the right for people to vote.
He also spoke at the convention. Another expected contender, MPP Adil Shamji, made a video of the connections he made at the convention. Asked today when he'll jump into the race.
It isn't finalized, but we're certainly charging forward with our leadership campaign, and I will say we're feeling an overwhelming groundswell of support.
The deadline to enter the race is early September, with a leader chosen on December 2nd. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
The jury in a civil trial has awarded $5 million in damages to a woman who sued former U.S. President Donald Trump for rape and defamation. It took just a few hours for the 9 jurors to reach their unanimous verdict. Trump has denied the accusations and is calling the verdict a disgrace. His lawyers say they will appeal. CBC's Chris Reyes has more.
We've been here the whole time. We covered the trial. Just one statement, please. We're very happy.
A Manhattan jury has found former President Donald Trump sexually abused author, journalist E. Jean Carroll in the mid-90s and then defamed her when he called her a liar after she went public with that story in 2019. E. Jean Carroll also alleged that Trump raped her. On that account, the jury did not rule in her favor. The jury deliberated for just under 3 hours to reach a verdict. It comes a week and a half after this trial began, with 2 days of testimony from E. Jean Carroll and 11 witnesses in total called by her team, including the 2 women that she told about the incident shortly after it happened, and 2 other women who have separately accused Donald Trump of sexual assault. Now, Trump was given the opportunity to show up or testify. He did neither. His team has repeatedly called this case a hoax, that it's a made-up story, that E. Jean Carroll brought this lawsuit forward because she is politically motivated out of her hatred for Donald Trump. Carroll's lawyers did play 2 videos of Donald Trump, including the now famous Access Hollywood tape, where you could hear Donald Trump talk about how he gropes women, and then his video deposition from last fall, where he confirms that he believes that stars often get away with sexually assaulting women. The 9-member jury in Manhattan has awarded $5 million in damages to Carroll. And because this is a civil lawsuit and not a criminal case, despite this verdict, there is no jail time for Trump. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
Beijing has wasted no time in responding to Canada's expulsion of a Chinese diplomat. A Toronto-based consular official was ordered out yesterday over alleged threats to the family of Conservative MP Michael Chong. Today, a Canadian diplomat in Shanghai was told to go home. CBC's Rafi Bujikanian has the details.
Beijing said its retaliation for showing Chinese diplomat Zhao Wei the door would be swift, and it was not kidding. We are asking a Canadian diplomat in Shanghai, Jennifer Lynn Lalonde, to leave, he said. This is China's move to safeguard its legitimate rights and interests. Ottawa, defiant.
We will not be intimidated, and we will continue to do everything necessary to keep our Canadians, keep Canadians protected from foreign interference.
The diplomatic tit-for-tat comes a week after the Globe and Mail reported that a 2021 CSIS report showed Beijing sought information about a member of parliament who had family living in China. Citing an unnamed security source, the Globe identified that MP as Conservative Michael Chong. The person looking for intel is Chinese diplomat Zhao Wei. Chong was sanctioned by China in 2021 after he sponsored a motion declaring China's treatment of its Uyghur population a genocide.
If we expel one of their people, they will expel someone comparable in China. You know, nothing unexpected or unusual about that.
But this China observer says Beijing could make further moves.
I think what we have to look at is if China will go beyond that and engage in some kind of spurious trade sanctions, violation of trade contracts to try and punish Canada, or indeed if we see any action taken against Canadian citizens in China.
Well, today MPs also heard from Chinese Canadian dissidents, reminding Beijing's arm reaches across the ocean too.
The diaspora is actually encouraged to survey on each other and report on each other. There is guilt by association to begin with, so if you're associated with someone who has been seen as a troublemaker, you're less likely to get a job promotion. You're likely to be denied services.
These kinds of allegations once again have the opposition parties asking for a foreign agent registry and a public inquiry into foreign interference. The government says it's moving ahead with a registry, but on the inquiry, it says the ball's still in the court of the special rapporteur, who's supposed to make a call in the next couple of weeks. Rafi Bujikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Let's take a live look outside there. Another gorgeous day in our city, and tomorrow, lucky us, we have another one on the way with a high of 23 degrees. Colette Kennedy will join us after the break with more. Stay with us. Nearly 30,000 people remain out of their homes in Alberta as wildfires rip through parts of the province. There are about 90 active fires province-wide, and close to 30 are burning out of control. CBC's Katie Nicholson has this report from Brazeau County, Alberta. It's one of several communities dealing with wildfires, and an evacuation order remains in effect.
This is Brazeau County. It's an area roughly 150 kilometers southwest of Edmonton. And this particular area that we're in right now, this ranch, it's flanked on three sides by significant fires considered to be out of control, including one off to the west here. And that's why when you look across this field, you'll notice all of this soil has been upturned. It's something known as disking. This is something that farmers, ranchers, property owners are doing out here as a fire mitigation effort on their properties. Those who haven't been yet evacuated, trying to do everything they can to preserve their structures and their land and their livestock. We are getting some early reports of what the damage is in this area from some of those damaging fires, including that 4 structures have been claimed so far, but it is very early days. It is still very risky to get into some of these areas, so it's hard to get a really good sense across Alberta what the damage is yet. It'll be something that insurance adjusters will be dealing with for months to come, particularly because this is far from over. Right now there's a bit of a reprieve in the weather. It's cooled down a little bit. There's been the odd sprinkle of rain, but the temperatures are expected to soar into the weekend, and with these tinder dry conditions, that is a significant spot of worry for people across the province right now. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Brazeau County.
Colette Kennedy joins us now for a look at weather. Now, Colette, after what we saw about what's happening out west, how might that impact our skies locally?
Yeah, it's such an interesting situation when we look at these kind of things in the upper atmosphere, Katerina, because essentially it could end up having a somewhat positive impact on us, and I'll explain here what I mean. So first of all, just looking at the advisories that are in place there. Okay, this is a weather advisory for funnel clouds. I'm going to leave that alone for a moment, and let's look at the air quality statement. I showed this yesterday, and there are obviously forest fires not just in Alberta but in BC too. So at the low levels in the atmosphere, here's where you really have the issues with that smoke. But we were seeing the prevailing winds being from the southeast. So if it was pushing it anywhere, it was north and west. Today, we're watching some of those air quality statements, so at the lower levels in the atmosphere, now making their way into Saskatchewan. But what happens in the upper atmosphere is that some of that smoke is picked up and pulled by the jet stream, or the upper winds at least, over towards Ontario. That's already been showing up. And I say a positive impact. I mean, understand what I mean by this, but we get into hazy skies. It doesn't tend to be at the lower levels where it can affect our breathing, but it can provide these really beautiful sunsets. And we may begin to see that, because we have high pressure in place, begin to show up this week as we get into the latter part of the week, but the latter part of our days because of that smoke. We saw the mention there of some light showers. Yeah, it's really sporadic. It's not a heavy soaking rain. And then we're seeing the extension of all those lightning strikes, which can certainly spark more fires. And that's why they are looking with some of those storms having funnel clouds, not expected to touch the ground there. So in terms of the daytime highs, bringing it back home and what we're talking about, 19 degrees with sunshine. Further east, there were some cooler numbers because of a lake breeze off Lake Ontario, and even seeing some of that towards Chatham, Kent, Sarnia, again getting into some of that cooler air. Look, comes in from the lake, comes in from the lake, completely different directions. So we'll see that develop when we have these kind of conditions at this time of year, just because the lakes and the land, they tend to heat up at different rates there. So there's high pressure in place. The activity in the west, everything just is going to either stay away or go around us to the north and to the south for several days yet, or even evaporate in our drier conditions. So we have clear skies then in the forecast tonight. The precipitation forecast is basically nada, no precipitation here in the next few days. And, I was talking about how this weekend bringing in a chance then of seeing some showers. It is slight, but it is there as we get to the end of the week. Tonight it's 6, tomorrow morning 10. We warm up more quickly now. The sun's up early, and by the afternoon 23. There are those building temperatures, and you see I start bringing in that chance of showers kind of each day, Friday through the weekend, but it's still slim at this point.
Okay, I'll hold on to that word, slim chances. That's
yes,
good.
Yes, that's where it lies.
Thanks for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
When we come back, we're going to tell you about that rare bird sighting at Point Pelee. Stay with us. People from all over the world are flocking to Point Pelee this week. It's migration season at the park. Folks who made the trek to Leamington for the Festival of Birds caught a super rare treat. A single willow ptarmigan was spotted at the tip. This is incredibly rare for our neck of the woods. The bird is usually found in northern parts of Canada. It's common in Labrador. Now, this sighting was the first one ever recorded in Point Pelee. We caught up with a birder right after they saw it earlier today.
My name is Donnie Moore, and I'm a local Essex area nature and wildlife photographer and bird nerd, so somewhat. Well, last night we started getting bits of information that a willow ptarmigan had been spotted in Wheatley Provincial Park, which is very close to the park, just off to the east. Now, this bird has been spotted in a number of locations in the last couple of weeks. First of all, in the Toronto area, and then in St. Thomas a few days ago. So the excitement was starting to build. Will it show up in Point Pelee? Now, there's no guarantee the bird's not going to cooperate, but thankfully the bird did cooperate, and it turned up this morning right on the tip of the point. And obviously, at this time of year, birders are there in their hundreds. So all these birders got to see this bird. It wandered around a little bit, flew into trees, continued wandering as more and more people showed up. Now, by the time I got there, I was a bit of a lazy birder this morning. And by the time I got there, most of the parking lots were full, and I ended up having to park sort of halfway down the park. So that just gives you, if you know Point Pelee at all and the amount of parking spaces, that just shows you the amount of interest in not only just birding at this time of year, but in this bird in particular. This is the first record ever for Point Pelee. And you see birders here who've been coming here for 40, 50 years and see the excitement in their faces. It just makes it worthwhile, not only seeing the birds, but seeing the people enthusiastic about being outdoors and seeing this bird. So it was a great morning. If you ever look at range maps for it, this bird typically, Quebec, northern Quebec forests, woodlots around the James Bay, Hudson's Bay is where it becomes more common. So even below the James Bay, sort of north of Algonquin is really rare for it. This is obviously super rare. So there's really no explanation why it's come this far. There will be some debate whether this is a captive bird that somebody's, for some reason, has had as either a game bird or a pet of some description. Maybe at some point that'll get verified for sure. But they wouldn't be an easy bird to keep compared to some other game birds. It couldn't have worked out better. These are the days that make Pelee what it is. It's a mecca for birders. People, it's a tourist destination for bird watching. Birders from all over the world coming here because of that. So this place is a great asset to the whole area just for the birds, and that to me is a great thing.
A cake artist in India has designed her way to a new world record. She has created the largest cake featuring an Indian palace. The vegan masterpiece weighs a whopping 200 kilograms and stands more than 3 meters high. That's about 10 feet. She says she was inspired by India's majestic architecture and wanted to pay tribute to the various palaces across the country. And the really good news is that it's not just for show. The cake is entirely edible. That is so beautiful. That is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, you can always go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor, and you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.